My name's Neil Burridge. Welcome to my sword corner. Over the last 20 years I've made a lot of these, I've seen a lot of swords in museums, and I've learned a lot, and I'd like to share it with you. Welcome back. Spearheads. We're going to look at spears. We're going to look at spears from Middle Bronze Age to Late Bronze Age, the socketed spears. I'm not going to look at early Bronze Age spears because they're a world of their own, and they're not very prolific and not very exciting, but the socketed spears are far more exciting. I watched a lovely program the other day, and it was a flint knapper making tools to chop mammoths up with on David Attenborough program, and they said they had a spear from like 65,000 years ago, which was like one of these baked wooden point spears, good enough to take down a mammoth. So it shows the idea has been there for a long time, and the spear must be a weapon that starts off as a hunting tool and then becomes a weapon of war. So it's quite interesting. There is lots and lots and lots of spears. The spear development, once it reaches the socket, really does take off, and it almost overtakes the development of the blade. The blade takes second seat, and if you look at all the drawings of warriors on the urns in the Mediterranean, shield and spear and maybe a helmet, and I think it's because the sword is a weapon that is far more involved in its manufacture, whereas the small spear is much quicker to make, and you can arm an army much quicker. So then it gets down to technical stuff for fighting, but there seems to be this standoff where spears become bigger and bigger, not for any great reason that is obvious. It's not like, yeah, that spear would kill somebody so much better than that tiny little spear. It's not like that. There's something about the sort of the artwork of posh metalwork and status creeps into the spear. So by the time you get to this spear, they're making bronze shields, huge spears like this, and it all starts to change and move towards the sword starts to take over as the weapon. We looked at rapiers earlier, and I think I might have pointed out a couple of spears. So this spear in particular belongs to the Witham bronze shield. The shield was found with a spear, and then the spear disappeared. Nobody could find it. And a few years ago, they were, I think they basically excavated the garden of the person who found the spear, the shield, the Witham shield, and they found this spear, except it had the end third missing. It was completely disappeared. So the reconstruction I did was totally hypothetical. I just followed the lines of the blade to where I thought the point was, and I made it up. So it came out huge. It was interesting that a guy in another country copied my spear, and he did his spear exactly the same length, not knowing that the length that I put up, 21 3/4 inches, was my hypothetical reconstruction. So I could tell it copied me. Spear casting as technology is actually quite difficult, and the reason is that they're hollow all the way to the end. Inside it's tubular, and the guy who copied me didn't grasp that, so he cored it out to where the spear shaft would end, and the rest was solid, so it weighed some staggering amount of weight, and the structure collapsed in the casting. Here you could see all the casting where it had gone to a thick bit and then gone tubular, so the structure collapsed, And the spear was incredibly heavy. I think it was something like 2.5 pounds. So just for a laugh, I posted a picture of a pile of my spears on a set of digital scales up to 2.5 pounds in thing. I might put a picture on there. I only did it to taunt him, just to show. Anyway, so that's quite interesting. The earliest spear I've got here is this one. This is from Heathrow Airport, and it's probably quite an early spear, cast socket, and it's got these flarings on the side with loops. No idea what they're for, because usually you pin these through to the shaft. Most spears are pinned to the shaft, so they must have been tying something to the spear. It doesn't really make any sense to me, other than some kind of odd decoration. But anyway, this was dug up at Heathrow Airport under one of the terminals, and I made a load of objects for the display in the airport. So if you ever go to the new terminal at Heathrow, if you're ever allowed out of the country, you'll see a wooden bowl, a bronze spear, all in a little display case, talking about the archaeology they discovered underneath the current terminal. Anyway, so that's quite interesting. So spears, before they get to here, the tangs are flat, and then somebody has a brilliant idea of hammering the tang out wider and rolling it into a tube, which is exactly what you get in the Saxon period. When people are making spears, they do the same. They forge the iron out, roll it into a tube. So it just shows that everybody works through same material or different materials with, and human beings follow the same route in technologies to construct what they need. So I thought it was an interesting parallel. So we've got quite a collection here. There is hundreds and hundreds of spears in the Bronze Age, Middle Bronze Age, Late Bronze Age. So the other spear that was found with the shield is, he's looking around for it, this one. This is a small spear, far more practical size than the other one. I mean, if you're going in to fight somebody with your spear and shield like Hector and Achilles, I think I'd prefer this one. It's much more practical. Again, they're pinned through with a hole on the side, but this one, again, would have had, where these flarings are, there's holes in the base behind, as if something was being used to attach, but not use that to attach the spear to the shaft. Doesn't make any sense. So pinning is the constant method, either bronze rivets, big bronze pins in some of the very strange spears, or whatever you can use. Bit of antler is very strong and you can remove it. Remember, spear shafts break. You might want to make sure you can actually remove your spear at a later date to put on a new shaft if the shaft gets broken. So there's been lots of research, and I'm lucky that I've been involved in lots of projects where spears were beaten against shields of bronze and shields of leather, and there's some interesting results have come from it. But a spear is a much quicker weapon to make than a sword, so which is it's a kind of interesting, but it probably didn't, and at a certain point it wouldn't have had the prestige that wearing a sword would. Anyway, so we're going to look at this one. So this one, again, found with a shield, again hollow all the way up to here. They got the mastery of these thin sockets on the back of the spears, and some of them are perfectly thin all the way down, and when they get broken, the core alignment is exactly perfect, and you go, oh, how do they do that? Well, they're obviously using something at the base to locate the spear core, and they're possibly using shapes or little bronze pins further up to locate it at the end, but they seem to completely master it. And I did wonder if possibly the lunate part of the spear here with the cutouts is a way of bridging the coring to locate it, because you can pin it across inside and extend the core up to here and get it to locate. Spears are often cast in stone moulds, especially in Europe, and there is a bronze mould here in Taunton Museum. Got a lovely bronze spear mould. So once you've got a mould, you can make your cores to locate into it, and then you can increase production. So once you've got a bronze mould, if you get the act together, you can keep repetitively casting in this mould and produce basically hundreds of them if you're a skilled caster. The lunate spears pass through time, and there must be something about them. And one thing I have noticed when I looked at them, they're quite often never even, the lunate parts of the spears. They're quite often slightly staggered. And I don't think this is due to the mould distortion when they're making them, because the moulds be made in 3 parts, one side, 2 side, and location of the core. So if that was happening, you'd get misalignment between this side and that side would come out in the lunates, and you don't tend to get that. So it's a deliberate reason why one of these will be slightly different from the other. Decoration on spears has always been fascinating, so I've incorporated this. This is the Selborne Blackmore hoard, and it has this repeating circular motif on the longest spear, which was actually probably nearer that size, to be honest. So we're looking at Wilburton type sword, sort of 800, 1100 BC. But the reciprocating circles I find fascinating, so it must be a representation of the sun, I'd guess, but beautifully installed. The big spear here, I'm going to look at it under here just to talk it through. And I'm going to bring that one into the, not that one into the picture as well. I mean, these two spears are hundreds of years apart, so this is somewhere around 1200. So it's probably about 200 years difference between the two, but they've carried the motif across that it's still in use for 200 years. So, and what's interesting, by the time you get to the late Bronze Age, there seem to be, the deities seem to be more water-based than they are solar-based, is what I can make out from Flag Fens, with the deposit of objects on the seaward side of the bridge across the causeway that they've built, where objects are broken and cast into the water on the seaward side, because they were suffering rising sea levels, and it's when you get all the marshes in Cambridgeshire start forming from the early bronze, well, from Neolithic onwards, they come up. And Muss Farm has quite an interesting track of this, looking at one excavation on the edge of a river where the water level continuously buried previous archaeology, and they were able to literally date it by a tape measure going downwards. So it's quite interesting. So the decoration on this is so square in cross section that it must have been put into the model when they cast it. So it seems that this was probably lost wax, whereas most of the moulds that turn up are clay impression moulds, and usually decoration is added afterwards. So it's quite an interesting sort of comparison. Again, all swords, the edges are forged to harden them. I sent a sword. It was actually this sword. I sent a spear to a gentleman in America, in Texas, called ThegnThrand, to test the spear. And it was usually an open book, and the first thing they did was punch the spear through a car bonnet, and they did it several times. And this was a big American classic car bonnet.
Ah! That's my throwing slide technique. And we pierced 20 gauge steel. Okay. Ah!
Did you hit? You did. You hit double metal.
I hit double metal and I went into both metal. Ah!
It dented the other side.
All right, what apparently happened here is I've got a hole which I thought was quite shallow, but I felt it stop. And what we've done is we've hit the second brace in here of 20 gauge steel, and it bent it back out and dimpled it, so it almost made it through. It's got a nice hole.
You can see where the
cut
point
the
was
metal on
from.
the back side. I can feel it.
Yeah. And
Oh! Now, that's what a full throw would do, and that would be a full penetration, like I would say a kill.
So the gauge of steel was quite solid, and the spear, even when it hit a double layer of metal, the end didn't break or chip, and the spear kept its edge. He also later bashed it against a piece of medieval armour somebody had given him, a sort of body carcass thing, and the spear went through it. And to be honest, I was quite amazed. With the edges being properly hardened, the form and the tip being hardened, it became very effective. That was quite a big learning curve for me, to see how technical processes affect the performance of the object in tests. So you can always learn stuff. And in this country, you get these very rare, there's not lots of these, they're called ferrules, and they go on the end of spears at the far end. So one end would have the bronze and one end would have the ferrule. They're sometimes decorated, and quite often you get a triangular motif with a dot on the end, especially in the hoard like the Islam hoard. It has this triangular dot motif with shaded in triangles. So some of them have a bit of decoration here, but they are rare. There's not lots of them. It's probably one of these to every 50 spears they are found in archaeology. So it's quite an interesting comparison. Another spear that caught my interest in these tubular hollow spears from this one's Bloody Pool hoard, and I've mentioned it in an earlier film. There is a certain curator of the Bronze Age somewhere in this country has this tattooed on his arm. He was so excited over it. It became his sort of iconic tattoo. They basically got a blade edge, and then they go hollow section all the way across. The core alignment on the broken sections was perfect. They're only about 1 millimetre thick. Like, incredible. And when you see them in the museums and inspect them, you just think, oh my God, how do you copy these things? They're so elegant, and the quality of their workmanship is so high. So I found this. So this hoard was again broken up. It had a ferrule with it, I believe, if I remember right. And the hoard was broken up and buried in a pool. Again, they turn up in these late Bronze Age hoards, and it was sort of broken into 3 pieces like this. So the spear was heated up and then hit with a hammer over an edge. We're going to have a quick look at this one, which is quite interesting. In the earlier film, we'll post a picture of this with the leaf bladed form, but there's something about the elegance of these spears. Again, hollow all the way to the end. I haven't finished this one. It would need a hole in the side. Might have had a bit of parallel line decoration, is quite common. But this spear is the Canusti spear, and I'll do a program on it later, but just give you an idea. It's one of the few golden spears decorated with a gold band. So we've got the gold here, and I haven't applied it yet, so I've got to put the gold in and then press it into the decoration. It's unusual, this spear. I've done it all with bronze tools all the way across, and I've copied it fairly accurately to the original, and the last job is to press the gold sheet onto it. So I've coloured the spear dark because the gold contrasts with it dramatically, and this is not a new idea. The Nebra Sky Disc had the colouring on it. They think the colouring was done by egg yolk or egg white to enhance the colour and create a chemical reaction to get it darker. But if you lay the gold over a bronze spear, you don't really get a lot of contrast, and that's why I was thinking the contrast to show off the gold, you need a base colour to show it against. So it's quite an interesting parallel. Anyway, we'll look at this in a later film when I've got the courage to actually squeeze the gold into there. Well, so a quick round off. There are thousands of spears in the late Bronze Age. Middle Bronze Age, they have their peak, and there's this transition between the end of the Middle Bronze Age, where spears got bigger and bigger and more elegant, and then it tips over into the late Bronze Age, where swords become bigger and bigger and spears become smaller and smaller. There's a curator in guy took a spear to a museum in London he'd found on the riverbank in the Thames, and the curator said to him, "Go back and look for a second one. They're quite often found in pairs." And he did. And a week later he came back to the museum with the other spear, and he'd found them side by side. Anyway, that's all I got on spears today, and I'll catch up with you again. Thank you. I don't monetize my films. The idea is to share my knowledge with you. So if you want to support me, you can buy me a cup of coffee in the link below, and if you could like, share and hit the subscribe button, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.